Good morning, WJD. Taking early check-ins for the marker digital voice. Yes, or any, please call now. Well, good morning. This is WJD. Being here is Andy. I will be at control of the medical dance radio council digital voice that is held at 1500 UTC early Saturday morning. Uh, and we discuss primarily medical matters, but sometimes various local issues that go along with that. Uh, right now we presently have 4 check-ins, including myself, and list the 9 L. Joy, 2BBQ, who is basically kind out, won't be able to participate. N3 OAM and N3 FCZT. It's basically a control path, with each person being called individually and asked to comment. We are on that logger, Mark Wake DBNet, and it is also being recorded in the background by Hilton on the YouTube live channel as well. So, and usually it's also recorded here by by Markia for audio presentations for archives at a later time. So, any additional questions, please call.
WJ8B. This is Kilo 3 Foxtrot Zulu Tango K3FZT Steve in Philadelphia. And there's a bit of an echo that I'm hearing. K3FZT.
Yeah, we got to see. We knew what that was. We're gonna fix it. I had one radio for monitoring purposes and turn the volume down on it. It sounds like it needs to be turned out just a little bit further. We'll take care of that in just a moment. So occasionally we have people who have trouble getting in, and if I monitor the other 2 modes, I can kind of tell if that's an issue. So well, today sounds like we're just going to be relatively short yet. I am just going to give a brief talk about diabetes management. For those who general interest throughout my career, I have not been in practice for 3.5 years, so some of the stuff has changed a little bit in the interim, and so we'll kind of go along with that. And I checked into the material and some material from UK usage recommendations, which pretty much echo what I got in the other areas as well. So One more time, is there any additional check-ins for the Marco Digital Voice Net? Please call now. You do not have to be a Marco member anyway. If you want to check in and out and just listen, that's welcome as well. So, again, any additional check-ins for this Saturday morning Marco Digital Voice Net? Okay, so we have no more. That's okay. So, let's try to keep this relatively brief. There's a lot of things, of course, you can talk about on diabetes. You can talk probably 3 or 4 1-hour sessions. And briefly, there's lots of non-medical management. Won't spend a lot of time on those. Of course, on the obvious diet management, weight loss, because they're having increased BMI, or increased exercise and other related factors, which would include hypertension or hyperlipidemia. Um, in addition to that, for type 2 diabetes, weight loss surgery is definitely effective. And some type 1 diabetics, even islet cell transplantation has been done. And most of the time, we're not uh, you know, dealing with the decisions with those latter ones, but it can happen. So the drugs that are available, some of which have been around for a very, very long time, uh, still at the top of the list is metformin. And recently that's being pushed by what's called the SLGT2 inhibitors. These are drugs like Jardiance, which you see advertised frequently. And in many cases, is considered the first line treatment now. That's been relatively recent, with some certain exceptions. Let me break for time. I'll go over briefly mechanism of action. Metformin works via the liver. It causes in the liver not to produce as much glucose, and does have documented cardiovascular disease reductions and outcome studies that were well performed. Its main issue, of course, is side effects of stomach upset and diarrhea. This can keep as many as 15 to 25% of people from taking the drug at all. It can be problematic with people with significant chronic renal insufficiency also. SLGT2 inhibitors work by causing the kidney to excrete more glucose. Of course, this does cause some polyuria, can cause some dehydration in some individuals, and but it has clear cardiovascular and improvement in kidney function, especially those with chronic renal insufficiency, and they show outcome studies. For this reason, in many circles, it's become the drug of choice, particularly for anybody who's had any known cardiovascular disease or chronic renal insufficiency. There is an increased risk of DKA, and as I mentioned earlier, dehydration, hypovolemia, which is really the same thing. So hold on. We'll go through one more. This is the DPP4 inhibitors. These are things like Onglyza, Genivia, and Tradjenta. They're moderately expensive, and they work by reducing the metabolism of glucagon. So glucagon tends to creep up. So, some risks of increased cancer risk in people with a family history of multiple endocrine and neoplasia, and may exacerbate pancreatitis who have had a history of that. The cardiovascular outcomes are not clear. I think I'll take a break and see if there's any questions at this point, and we'll go on a little bit later. We'll take it first, Howard, and I know now. Go ahead. This is WKP. is 5RTF checking in. And we got you there, Jeff, and 5RTF. You'll be number 4 on the list. And IOML, you there?
WJPM and OML. Yeah, apparently I didn't get through. No, I said it was interesting, and it'll be interesting to see if metformin gets pushed by those other drugs, and ultimately whether the doctors decide that's a result of good medicine or a massive ad campaign. And a couple of them seem to be running, but time will tell. Back to that control on my OML. Hopefully I got through that time.
Yeah, you sound fine that time. The time before you weren't at all, but you're there just fine now. And yeah, I kind of agree. This is actually one of the more important things of this review. They both metformin and the SLGT2. The SLGT2 inhibitors have outcomes data. They're fairly robust. And still now, most are recommending metformin first because it is so much cheaper. There's no question. And 75% of the people who take it can't tolerate it. But the other one, of course, is there for those who can't tolerate it. And many cardiology people are recommending it ahead of metformin because it definitely has a slightly better cardiovascular effect because it also shows reductions in congestive heart failure. They actually have some mediators that actually show some rebuilding of the heart muscle due to some protein that it blocks. There's apparently an aging gene called Clotho. They put it in, I've never heard of this until I did my research. KLOTHO, that apparently reduces some aging factors and apparently has a direct effect on the heart. So it is definitely shifting in that direction. Still, metformin is recommended first because of the cost, but and certainly it's maybe not required as much medicine that not had any cardiovascular events. So next we'll go to N3IM. Go ahead. See if you have any comments.
This is N3IM on the market on that. Not too many comments. Obviously, the biggest side effect is the GI tract with diarrhea, and that's why most people stop taking it. But the slow release metformin seems to bypass that. However, another concern is that metformin can cause lactic acidosis, and that has to be looked at because its precursor fenformin caused a death due to lactic acidosis. Those are my comments. This is N3IM. Back to Mark on that.
Well, that's a good point. A lot of us forget those days. When I was in medical school at the Veterans Administration in Cincinnati, and we actually saw patients with that. That was on fenformin, not metformin. I don't know that metformin is sold. It can occur with metformin, but apparently it's far less likely. I don't believe I saw a case of that on metformin during the rest of my career. So I did a lot of hospital work. I did 30 years worth. So thanks for that. We'll go next to N3FZT. Do you have any comments?
Good morning. It's Kilo 3. Fox Zulu Tango, Steve, in Philadelphia. And yeah, having practiced emergency medicine for 43 years, I saw severe acidosis from lactic acidosis from fenformin. I recall patients who I gave every amp of bicarb I could find. I left practice about 4 years ago now. It'll be 4 years ago later this month. And I can tell you that during the era of metformin, I did not see metformin lactic acidosis. I saw patients with lactic acidosis who were taking metformin who were septic or had other reasons. And in those cases, of course, teasing out what was the real genesis probably impossible. So the caution is warranted, but let me take a break here. I'm also aware of a large community of users of metformin in the longevity life extension world who are based on a variety of animal work and some human studies of varying quality report that metformin offers many of the advantages that periods of fasting offer. I'm not so sure about that, but those folks tend to titrate their metformin dose over the course of the day and in smaller total doses, or they believe the putative life extension benefit is worth the diarrhea. I only know one such person I can interview in such depth. And so, that anecdote is worth what it's worth, not much. That's it for me, and hello all, and I'll be listening out the rest of the discussion. I'm very interested in how the gliptins have become such a threat. This is K3FZT.
Yeah, you made a good point about people trying to tolerate and titrate metformin. I saw that multiple times in my practice. Some figured it out, some never did, and some use long-acting metformin. But usually the cost was an issue on that as well. They were not as bad as Jardiance, but there was still some cost difference. Of course, Jardiance was just coming on the scene when I left practice. Had been out maybe 2 or 3 years. So, well, that's N5RTF WKP. Yeah, go ahead with any comments.
Sure, then before the X-ray is the reflector or quadrant used.
Yes, Bob, it is. This is a medical industry radio council. We meet usually between 11 to 12 Eastern Time every Saturday.
Okay, I'll wait till you folks are done with your net. This is Whiskey 4 Lima X-Ray and AGU.
In 5 RTF. You're there, and go ahead with any comments. Okay, well, I took my stuff away. Maybe having internet issues, so we'll go on with some of the other drugs. You know, we'll go on to the GLP-1 inhibitors, and those are basically the injectable drugs, similar to the DPP-4s, except that they're injectable and have a slightly different mechanism of action. They also inhibit the breakdown of glucagon, and they also increase what's called incretin, which is another hormone involved in helping people feel full or feel like they don't need to eat, and it does a little better job at that one than the oral similar ones, DPP-4s. Some of these drugs are actually marketed for weight loss more than they are for diabetes, so that's because there's lots of them. Rubella is one that's most recent. I don't remember the name of. There's 2 or 3 others. Some are only given once a week, and some there's one I get is given every day. And some of the endocrinologists favor it. So there's fairly definite weight loss associated with these, but outcome studies are not as promising as it is with metformin and Jardiance. And the DPP-4s don't have that good of outcome episodes. They all advertise that they do, but the studies are not that clear cut on either of those 2 classes. Next are the glycogens, which rosglyazone, pioglitazone, and pioglitazone is the main one that's used presently. They have an advantage; they're very cheap. They break for time. They modify the cellular production of a protein that's involved in both glucose and lipid metabolism. They do very well lowering the hemoglobin A1C. They also lower triglycerides fairly well as well. There is a slight risk of bladder cancer, but the risk is felt to be so low that it's not really a reason not to use it if you feel it's needed. They do cause some edema, and there's a slight risk of increased cardiovascular events in those that already have heart failure. It's not necessarily thought to be that much of an issue in most normal individuals. Interesting enough, these drugs can be used for NASH, which is the non-alcoholic cirrhosis, and there's been studies done showing that it is effective in preventing it, not necessarily in treating it. So, but that's another interesting thing. This is the old drug, the sulfonylureas. Their advantages, of course, they're quite cheap as well. They work by stimulating insulin production by the pancreas and decrease the clearance of the insulin by the liver itself and decrease the glucagon degradation. And their side effects can be significant hypoglycemia and a slight to moderate increase in cardiovascular events. And some of the older ones, the long-acting ones, also cause hyponatremia as well. And break. Okay, I think I'll break there and we'll save this one for last. So back up to the top in my LML. Control WJP. Go ahead with any comments.
WJP at 9LML. No, just listening along and following along. I appreciate the update. Some of it's beyond what we normally get at my level, so it's interesting to hear what you're saying. Appreciate your effort. Back to that control and then we'll.
Okay, well, that's good. Hilton's not interested. Is not going to be here for the next. Welcome back to N3. I am. Do you have any comments you have?
This is N3IM in the Mark.net. I really have no additional comments other than the fact that the interactions of metformin with other drugs such as cimetidine or topamax and also alcohol are other considerations that need to be taken as these have their own problems. Metformin causes an increase in the blood level of cimetidine and topamax, and we know what alcohol and metformin do and can actually lead to lactic acidosis with alcohol and metformin use. This is N3IM.
Yeah, I've not seen a lot of that, but when you brought it up, glad you brought it up because it's so funny it is. I have seen issues with alcohol with that. So, yeah, I'm sure that has occurred in that one as well because that's fairly well documented. That's definitely thing to remember as well. So, okay, we'll go back to K3FFT. Go ahead with any additional comments.
Well, thanks. I'm just going to wish everybody the very best 73, health and happiness. And since I suspect most of us are a day or two past 21, maybe we'll stop and remember our mothers tomorrow. And if she's still with you, well, you're a fortunate person. This is Steve in the Westmount Airy section of Philadelphia. K3F said T. I'll be clear.
That's great. Steve, good to have you on here this morning. Hope you have a good Mother's Day weekend. And yeah, my mom's been gone since 2000. It's been a few years. And I lost my mother-in-law only 7 years ago. So that was much more recent than that. She made it to 95. My mom only made it to 73. But yeah, Mother's Day is still a big event. Well, of course, is a mom, and I have a daughter who's a mom as well. And of course, I have them both here over the weekend. So Jeffrey's still there in 5 RTO. You have any comments about the diabetic drugs or anything else? Yeah, I checked most users have left early or having internet connection issues. So there's not sure and we've got all three of those listening here in the background. So, um, okay. We'll go back down to the last major um, drug thing, and of course is insulin. And insulin is mostly expensive. Some of the older biosimilar insulins, if they're real large, slightly less. But for the most part, insulin is a fairly major expense for those that are required. In general, it's reserved for in type 2 diabetics. For those that have failed the above drugs that we've already talked about, and for type 1 diabetics, require it from the very, very beginning. The most common regimen that's recommended, although most people don't find it very hard to learn, is daily long-acting insulin with short pre-meal short-acting insulin that are taken immediately before eating food. It works fairly well, but it's hard for a lot of people to learn. Almost have to have a regular class for many people, even people pretty well educated. It takes a while for them to learn how to do that. There's much more availability of constant glucose monitoring that's being used much more frequently and is becoming a little less expensive. People with commercial insurance generally can get it paid for if they need insulin. Um, Artificial pancreases are in active clinical trials and they are being used in several centers. And most of us feel that that'll be a standard of care when they're finally perfected for a lot of type 1 diabetics. Um, we'll go through briefly some of the common complications of diabetes. Most of us know these: gastroparesis, autonomic neuropathy, diabetic foot changes, which include ulcers and other issues in the feet, uh, the chronic kidney disease, and then, of course, erectile dysfunction, diabetic retinopathy, and there are many others. Those all have to be paid attention to, including regular ophthalmologic uh, evaluations and treat each one individually. I will not go into additional stuff on that much because that's a whole other study. It's probably beyond the time that we have available to talk about this. So, back up to the top. We break for time. And I don't know if you have any additional comments.
Toby and J, and 9LL. The only thing I'd mention is Medscape last week put out like one of their specials where they have about 5 papers cited that cover a lot of the same information you have. So if people are looking for a one-stop shop to find some information, they just published a bunch of stuff on diabetes and new drugs and some of the issues you were talking about also. So if anybody's looking for additional, that might be a place to turn for an easy look. And I don't know, back to that control.
Okay, N3IM, do you have any additional comments?
This is N3IM in the Marco Group. My only comment is that with the advent of the newer glucose monitors, which do not require people to prick their finger, I think diabetics who use that type of monitoring do better in the long run because they're more apt to take their blood sugar and adjust their insulin according to that information. So, particularly after having eaten, whether they're using a rapid acting insulin or whether they're using a long acting insulin, dependent on whether they're also using a combination. But I think the new glucose monitors have been a big boost in helping to control diabetes. This is N3IM.
Yes, they are. They're very, very good in that department. One of my children came down with diabetes about a year and a half ago, and he quickly went to one of those and set a stick in his finger, and get very good track of it. Is the commercial insurance because he's basically a government employee in the Washington D.C. area, but and most people with good commercial insurance can get that paid for pretty well. Medicare is not real good at paying that. Uh, but again, those that can do it, it's certainly a welcome way of doing that. And it actually is a teaching tool as well because people can very, very quickly learn what foods are really bad and which ones aren't as bad. And he studied that pretty well ahead of time. Most of what he studied was borne out from the meter when he had sugar. And so it's amazing that when you have these things correlate like that, it's very easy to remember what's bad. And so that's a very positive thing of that. Hopefully, the price will come down enough that the insurance coverage will get better on that so that it'll be available to nearly everyone. So, yeah, it's certainly a good thing. And of course, once they get that combined with the artificial pancreases for the type 1 diabetics, it should make it even better, difference. So, anybody else who would like to check into the Marco Digital Voice Net for Saturday morning, please call out. I did see a few people check in on uh, the AI member on the Marco uh, logging net and NetLogger, and but they both have come in and out as WW6AA and also W5AYE. So if either of you are listening, feel free to check in. So does anybody else like to check in at this point? Okay, well, everybody have a good Mother's Day weekend. We didn't have a lot of people in here, but I kind of figured, being as it was, it would not be a lot. Okay, she'll be back next weekend, and I also believe the book club is on Tuesday this coming week. So that's to look forward to on Marco as well. The date and ambition is coming up. I looked up the schedules, and they've got that published on the ambition website. I will be there both Friday and Saturday. I'll be going around the various booths. I will be going to all three digital modes presentations, which all occur on Friday. Um, and also will be helping out the Auto Link Network, which will be just on the edge of the big racetrack. Auto Link Network is a fusion network based in Ohio with multiple repeaters. We will be there periodically helping out, and then that will help to visit the market as well. So everybody has a good weekend. This is the end of the Market Digital Voice Net for this Saturday. We'll see you all next weekend. WJB Clear.
N3 I am clear.
WJP and 9 Thanks for your effort putting everything together, Andy. Have a good weekend. Tony Treetop, and 9 clear.
QRZ is the quad net reflector freed up now. This is Whiskey 4 Lima X-ray.